Hey guys, today we talk about teaching yourself how to program. And my guest was self taught and is also an entrepreneur. We talk about the growing importance of knowing more about programming and technology in general, just how it works behind the scenes, because we're going to face it in the future. My guest today, Derks. Oh, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you're on YouTube and follow us on your favorite podcast platform. Enjoy.
Beyond Coding. Welcome to Beyond Coding, a dive into the world of successful people in IT. From your sponsors, Zebia, creating digital leaders. Here's your host, Patrick Akil.
Roy, how's it going, man?
All good. Thank you, Patrick.
Cool, man. So I invited you on to talk about self-taught engineers. I think it's kind of evolving since, but you're self-taught, right?
Yes, indeed. So, most of all, I'm an entrepreneur now, but I also like to create software.
Yeah.
And I started doing this when I was 14 already.
Okay.
To actually start my entrepreneurial journey.
Nice. That 14 is quite young. You always knew you wanted to kind of pursue that entrepreneurial journey, or?
Yeah. So my father was also an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Mostly in retail, bars, these kind of things.
Yeah.
But from early on, I already knew I wanted to start my own business. I think in lower school, I was already selling like gum bars and these kind of things to people
nice.
at the school.
Yeah, that's awesome. So then at 14, what did you pick up? Because you said you were self-taught. Is that when you kind of kickstarted your career in that?
Yeah, so I was 14 then. I'm 28 now, so it's about 14 years ago.
Yeah.
And I think PHP was then the sort of biggest, easiest language. You had Java, but it's really hard to start with Java if you don't know anything yet. So I started with PHP.
Yeah.
And basically I reverse engineered an open source framework just to figure out how you could change things, because plugins were also expensive.
Yeah.
So I had this idea for a marketplace for DVDs.
Yeah.
Because that was the major problem. I wanted to start becoming an entrepreneur. I really liked watching movies, but downloading movies 14 years ago was, you could do it, but it's a bit harder. And it was also illegal. So it's something I didn't want to do that much.
Yeah.
So I wanted to have more DVDs, but my pocket money was also limited. So I had one or two choices actually.
Yeah.
So either make more money or find a new way to get DVDs. So I came out with like a marketplace to buy, sell, and trade those DVDs.
Cool, man. And that was, you started at age 14. When did the marketplace then actually launch, and how did it go?
Well, I think the same year. I didn't really like high school. It was okay to be there during the breaks and meet with friends, but most of the classes were a bit boring. And so I did my entire best to not be there as much as possible within the legal boundaries. And then all my free time, I either spent it with friends or I devoted it to coding.
Yeah.
And I think it went live quite fast because, you had all these plugins. So in theory, it was really easy to do.
Yeah.
But then if you're a perfectionist, it's always harder to make something that you feel is worth going live with.
Yeah. I mean, it's never going to be perfect. So at some point, you just need to be confident enough and comfortable enough to go live with it, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, at least back then, my biggest priority was make sure the UI is okay.
Yeah.
And UIs were way different like 14 years ago.
Absolutely.
But to me, that was the biggest pain point. The UI should actually be good. And then the actual experience, how everything functioned, came second.
Yeah. Then you have that nice look and feel and kind of the functional thing. I mean, it should work, should do its thing as well.
Yeah, indeed. Websites 14 years ago were very different and things were slow. You need to reload the page every time you did an action. We had jQuery, PHP.
Yeah.
I don't really know people that use PHP anymore. I think Laravel is sort of okay-ish.
Yeah.
But jQuery, luckily, it's
it's gone now.
It's gone, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, way back when, you didn't have to deal with mobile views as well, which is now it's very big, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But then after you kind of kickstarted your market, it was a marketplace, right?
Like a peer-to-peer marketplace. It was mostly free trading between people, and then there was subscription model if you wanted to get a higher ranking in the trading. So I made an algorithm, or just a bunch of if-else statements, not really an algorithm, but you're 14. So people could find their DVDs easier, and if you paid I think it was like €5 per month or something, you will get a higher ranking in the algorithm.
Oh, nice. So people with their own product could rank higher because of that.
Yeah. So, and they could also do more trades.
Okay, that makes sense. Cool, man. So for me personally, out of high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do, if I wanted to go to university or start working right off the bat. Was that for you then the same? Because you already had a taste of the business life, let's call it. pretty early on.
Yeah. As for me, it was always doubting: do I want to be a software engineer, or do I want to be an entrepreneur? Do I want to be both? And back then, I think I didn't really realize you could be both.
Yeah.
So when I finished high school, I had like two choices: like either get funding for my startup, the marketplace, which is my preference, or go to university, what my parents really wanted.
Yeah.
And in the end, I think we settled on going to university just to make sure you have a job in the future.
Exactly.
But then it was really hard for me to decide between do I want to study computer science, or do I want to study business, economics? Do I want to do something else? Because still, I really hated education. I really hated high school.
Yeah.
So I was also looking for ways to not having to study, but do get an education. So I've explored all kind of things. But in the end, I ended up with economics and business economics, which was sort of a nice addition to what I already done before. But in the end, I'm not really sure if I actually learned things that, I don't know, sort of helped me in my career.
Yeah, it's hard to say in hindsight, right? Because it's a lot of theory, not necessarily that practical experience, which you get when you're done with university.
Yeah, definitely. And during university, you also, I don't know, you're using models and thinking patterns that have been there for like 40 or 50 years, which is kind of okay. I recently met a woman and she didn't went to university, and it's sort of a group of people in which we help each other to become more influential in public opinions.
Yeah.
And she's the only one that didn't study in university. And she also mentioned that we are way more structured, like the other people that did study, compared to her.
Yeah.
So I think in the end, it maybe did help me a bit.
Yeah, it probably gives you that structure basically to do, well, you have a certain goal, and it might be an assignment or accomplishing someone or working together with some other people. And you do that kind of continuously throughout your educational career, I guess. So maybe in those later levels, you get better at it as well. Probably.
Yeah, I think indirectly.
Yeah.
At least for I mean, if you're studying to become a surgeon or like a lawyer or something, then probably you really need your education.
Yeah.
But for economics and business economics, I think most people went on to consultancy in the end.
Yeah, exactly. Moving back then to self-taught engineers, way back when you taught yourself more of the technical aspects, and I think people are still doing it. I mean, either from university or from high school, people that have a laptop already can start teaching themselves or watching videos. There's enough content out there to teach yourself a lot of aspects. But what do you think makes the distinguish or the difference between someone that just teaches themselves for the heck of it and someone that can actually pursue a career down the line with the things they've taught themselves?
Well, it's sort of difficult. I think there are a lot of people that start coding themselves, like maybe on their attic, maybe in their free time.
Yeah.
But I don't have the numbers. Would be interesting to get some numbers on this. But I think a lot of people don't actually pursue a career after this.
Yeah.
I mean, I have friends that are in business or are working for the university, and they taught themselves how to code for a bit, like maybe some Python to do some data analysis.
Yeah.
And they basically taught to code, but they didn't really pursue a code in software engineering.
Yeah.
But I think the real difference is persistence. So you need to like it. You need to have stimulants at the right moments in time.
Yeah.
So for me, I didn't have a mentor or something, but because I was building a business, I got feedback from customers saying things were slow, things were non-performant. I don't know, maybe the algorithm I made got stuck because at some point I got too much users and then too much DVDs flowing in, and then the algorithm got stuck because with just if else statements.
Yeah.
So I keep raising the PHP limits to process the files, but in the end you get stuck. So you need to find new ways in order to do this. And then you start Googling, you start going to Stack Overflow, you start trying to find ways to make it more efficient. And for me, that really helped. But I think if I would have something like a mentor to help me, it would be even better.
Yeah.
Or maybe in university, I did some classes in computer science, and one was about SQL, and you actually needed to use a sort of algebra in order to find the best or most efficient SQL query.
Yeah.
Which is also kind of interesting because it changed my way of thinking. So when I started being self-taught, I thought I should do this in this way because that's what I read somewhere.
Yeah.
And then when you actually go into a computer science class, you actually start thinking about more theoretical. You start to figure out how else can I do this?
Yeah.
And it really helped me. But I think the biggest thing is persistence. So persistence and some sort of a fallback. So either a mentor or maybe a company you're building.
Yeah.
Or maybe not even a mentor, but maybe a friend that's also starts studying with you.
Yeah.
Or maybe if you start doing it in a boot camp, it could be nice to have other people in the boot camp that are also really ambitious.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that you said it's all about getting that feedback, right? And for you, it was actual customers. For other people, it can be the peers they're working with or a mentor they have behind them, to just talk about what you've created and the options you've taken, and also which option you took, right? Because if you're kind of new starting out, you, as you mentioned, think there's only one way or a few ways, but there's always multiple options you can choose from. And I think right now what distinguishes a really good developer is someone that kind of can weigh out those options, and can pick one or two of the best ones and then just pursue one. And if it's not the right one, can still shift and take the other route. But it's really hard, I think, to teach yourself that in thinking of that, because it's a shift in mindset, I think, from being self-taught to actually weighing out the options and continuing from there.
Yeah, definitely. So that's one thing I see happening, especially people that follow boot camps.
Yeah.
So there are like tons of boot camps out there, and they will probably teach you one thing, like either Salesforce or Node.js or React or Vue, these kind of things.
Yeah.
But they usually teach you how to use them, because that's of course the only thing you can teach someone in weeks or months.
Yeah.
But you don't really teach them how to think about the patterns, how to compare the other languages.
Yeah.
So usually in companies I work with, if there are junior developers, I often tell them, okay, try a different language. If you're using TypeScript or Node.js, try switching to maybe Python, try something else, maybe even try Java just for the sake of it.
Okay.
Just to get some comparison from another language, try to see what they're doing there, why do they do certain things.
Yeah.
How would it impact your own code style? So you can have like object-oriented programming or functional programming.
Yeah.
But either language takes a different approach. And if you're only used to React, in example, this is a language I use a lot, then you sort of think that everything you write is a component.
Yeah.
But for a different language, or maybe a backend language, or maybe Python, you don't really have components. So if you're used to React and you're thinking components, then it's really hard to change your mindset into thinking into functions or thinking into objects.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. I mean, they're all tools, right? Either a language or a certain way of doing it. It's all a tool. And probably in a boot camp, they show you the box of tools. Maybe not even necessarily how to use it or how to use it in a certain way.
Yeah, definitely.
But you can always use it in different ways. And I like that you mentioned trying to step out of what you already know in exploring a new language, because the way you use it might be completely different than the one you're used to. And then you can also just pick one of the tools that's most apt for the job instead of using a hammer for every job, basically.
Yeah, it's also really confronting. So, I mean, if I tried out some Python, I tried out some Java, but if you ask me today to maybe run a JavaScript or get some Kotlin, then probably have no idea how to do it. So it also helps change your mindset a bit. Like you think you're really good at something and then you try it slightly different with maybe a different tool. And then suddenly you feel like you don't really know what you're doing. A friend of mine recently told me a funny comparison. So he's a hockey player.
Yeah.
And he told me basically all hockey players have different hockey sticks.
Okay.
So I played soccer when I was younger.
Yeah.
But apparently like there are way different hockey sticks and every player has their own preference. Some hold their stick really low, some hold them really low.
Okay.
And if you would look at like the Dutch team for hockey, they all have different sticks and they all hold them slightly different.
Okay.
So it also shows that no matter what profession you're doing, you still need to have some diversification. You need to have some different tools or methods, and then you can still be good in what you're doing.
Yeah.
But it could be different than the person sitting next to you.
Yeah, I never knew that. I like the hockey analogy in that, I mean, you can have a tool, but the way you use it is how you are most effective, basically.
Yeah.
And it can be a personal trait.
Yeah, and if you go back to sports, if you look at Federer, he's like 40-something now, and he's still one of the better tennis players. Yeah. But if you look at his styles over the years, I think he has a career of like 20 years or maybe more. He actually changed it. So first, I think now his backhand is really good, but first his forehand was really good. So you keep changing over time. Yeah. Because also his body changes, his mindset changes. And for a developer and engineer, it could be the same. Like you get older, you get more knowledge about different frameworks. Yeah. And in the end, you need to make sure that you use the knowledge you already have to apply to newer things in order to stay a bit relevant. Once saw a diagram about developers being most productive, and I think it went up like this. And then somewhere around 35, 40, it actually went down. Okay. Because people either got too much experience to learn new tools. Also, their private lives changed. Like in the beginning, you have all this time, but then maybe you get children or you buy a house or you get different hobbies.
More commitments.
And then also with experience comes more responsibility. Yeah. So I think it also changes for you as an engineer. Like the older you get, the more you sort of shift away from really coding and also more trying into architecture or maybe management or all these sort of things surrounding your job.
Yeah. I mean, that gets into kind of the name or the verb developer or programmer or engineer, whatever, that it's evolving so much more than just sitting behind a keyboard and just bumping out a bunch of code, basically.
Yeah.
I think most of the time engineers are not really coding. They're either researching, learning, knowledge sharing, or just figuring out which option is the best one to take. And then doing the actual work is actually not that much in compared to all the preparation to do the right thing, basically. And I think, I don't know how it was previously, but I think it was just more coding in general.
Well, it's different. I think if you, like the way people look at the words developer and engineer, I think developer, at least, not that I agree or disagree, but I think a developer is someone that creates something.
Yeah.
And I think an engineer is something that creates something foundational. So maybe a new programming language, or maybe starts thinking about what kind of database should you use, how does it work in architectural ways, and a developer would probably just pick a database, implement it, create an API, and so forth.
Yeah.
So I think that's sort of the common way people think about it now, which you also see if you look at jobs. For developers, you often see people don't really have needed computer science education. For engineers, people often say you need to have foundational computer science experience. You need to know how different languages work, how a computer works inside. You need to have really high level or low level code experience.
Yeah.
So if you look at it this way, then probably 20 years ago, all developers were engineers and all engineers were developers.
Yeah.
Because if you didn't study computer science, you probably didn't know how to use a computer or how to program things.
Exactly. I use those words interchangeably, but I have seen kind of what you mentioned in that when it's a developer, it's more of a get it done attitude, basically. And it might be more based on the organization that's actually asking for a certain set of skills. I think when you're in a startup, it's more of that get it done, get the feedback fast, the proof of concept out there on MVP, and seeing if it actually works before you can scale it. And more of the engineer is maybe more in bigger organizations, when it's more about long term and about working together and maintainability and longevity of the thing you're building. And if you go that route, you need to know more than just getting it done, basically.
Yeah, definitely. But I'm still not sure if I actually agree with the words developer and engineer.
Yeah.
But this is what you read on Twitter a lot or in other communities. Like people sort of try to make a distinction between people that have foundational experience through computer science education.
Yeah.
Compared to people that just know how to get things done.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not sure if the comparison really should be there, because in the end, if you didn't study computer science, you can still get a foundational experience.
Yeah.
Through work experience, through trying out different languages, through working on tons of projects, working for different companies.
Yeah.
And also having good mentors. I mean, if you did a bootcamp 2 years ago, you started working for a company, you got a lot of responsibility, you work a lot with maybe the senior members or the CTOs. And still you can get that foundational experience without having computer science background. But as long as people really keep making distinction between engineers and developers, it's also really hard to get out of that stigma of being a developer, because maybe you only did a bootcamp or maybe you taught yourself how to code. And then for me, it was 14 years ago. But if it was 2 years ago for you, probably you'll be in that stigma for the next 5 years or something.
Yeah.
Until you actually have the work experience to prove that you're, in their eyes, not just a developer, but also an engineer.
Yeah. And I mean, even with that work experience, some companies don't really test that work experience in kind of an interview process, for example. You might need to solve an algorithm, but in practice, you're never going to do that because you're building an actual product. And the solving of the algorithm might be a very small part of the bigger whole, basically. Yet companies are really fixated on testing those skills in particular. I don't know where that comes from, though. I think
it goes back to the thing I told you about university. Like you learn a lot of things.
Yeah.
You learn how to structure things, you know, a certain mindset. But for the rest of my life, I probably will never write an essay again or need to do research about stock companies or these kind of things, the things I did in economics.
Yeah.
So I think it goes back to that. You sort of learn a way of thinking or how to structure things.
Yeah.
And then if you learn it through computer science, then you could do it later on. So probably their idea is if you know how to create an algorithm, you probably also know how to make a switch statement in order to decide which component to render.
Yeah, that makes sense. But then you're kind of filtering out people that don't have that experience necessarily, or they need to specifically learn about algorithms because that's being tested just to pass the bar and get hired to then use their own skill set, basically.
Yeah, definitely. And I think if you just started coding, if you did a bootcamp or followed some online course and you start working at Facebook, working on some tiny compiler or some tiny component, then probably it's also not the job in which you will learn the most.
Yeah, exactly.
I think especially if you have little experience, then it would be really useful to work at a startup, work at a smaller company, maybe even freelance, which is also a bit scary because I know people that went to a bootcamp, then started freelancing.
Yeah.
And then often you really see in code quality that they've been working on their own, because especially those first years, you really need some guidance. You really need a company that helps you or a mentor that helps you. Or
that feedback.
Yeah, really the feedback.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's funny that you mentioned Facebook and kind of the bigger organizations, because currently the job market is pretty tight when it comes to developers. Tight meaning that there's just not enough developers or engineers, whichever label you want to use, basically. Yet the bigger companies are creating more and more jobs and more options for developers to go there instead of the smaller organizations. You can name your startup or your kind of medium organization. And there's a difference in pay and kind of skill set required. And I think people are more and more navigating to the big companies in that aspect, which is quite a shame.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, I don't know, maybe it's also the circle of life. I mean, you start somewhere small, then you go to bigger companies. And in the end, something I do see at those bigger companies is people also start leaving, maybe around their 40s or something, to either start a new company themselves or start working for a smaller company.
Yeah.
But it is a real problem. I mean, Facebook wants to create 10,000 jobs in Europe.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the Netherlands, but I do think they have a bigger and bigger office here. So there could be a big chance a lot of these people need to come from the Netherlands.
Yeah.
So I am kind of worried where will they get like this 10,000 engineers?
Yeah.
You already said in the Netherlands, I think 50% of the developer jobs that we have or engineering jobs, they really can't find someone because there aren't enough people here. So I work with companies in the past and we got people all over Europe or even the world to start working for us in the Netherlands. And then you have to compete with just other startups or other scale-ups. As soon as you start competing with bigger companies, it's really hard to do it. So you really need to find people that want to work for a smaller company, that really want to learn how things go at a certain smaller company. But then they also might just leave after 2 years. Yeah,
I think that's really hard for a company to, because it's not necessarily about pay. It's about what you're doing, whom you're doing it with, the environment around it, and probably the way that you're doing it, and how much you can learn, especially if you're starting out and this is your first job, basically.
Yeah, so your career is also an investment, and people sometimes forget because you want to see immediate return. So if you invest in stocks, you know you put money in and then you expect it to be more in 5 years.
Yeah.
But the biggest investment is your career. So if you start investing your time now to learn to code, to improve your coding, then maybe you're making, like, let's say you would make 10,000 today.
Yeah.
Maybe if you start investing in yourself, really start writing tutorials, start following courses online, try to find good guidance, maybe you can make 100,000 in 2 years. And then that's probably a bigger investment than invest in stocks today.
Yeah, that's quite the bump, actually. I'm wondering, because you touched upon freelancing initially, in that when you're starting out, it's probably good to start at a company, get the feedback before you, if you want to do that, actually pursue that career. But when do you think is kind of the time then, or the sweet spot to move into freelancing?
Really depends. So I think you should only move into freelancing if you feel you're, you have enough experience in order to work independently. Yeah. You also want to work independently. I mean, it is a bit different if you were used to a company where you would have drinks every Friday evening, where there would be things for you organized. I mean, if you go to freelancing and you have no friends, you don't like to work independently, then it would be really strange to go into freelancing.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it really depends on what you want to achieve. I think freelancing is great if you want to travel the world, you want to see other countries, you want to make products for different companies. Yeah. Then it really makes sense. But I think a lot of people that go into freelancing have the idea that they will make way more money freelance than working for a company. Well, I think in the end, if you look for the right companies, if you make good career choices, and you have the proper guidance, you will make more money in the end if you would have worked for a company than going to freelancing. So it's, I think it's a double-edged sword, and it really depends on the person. If you would make really make it successful. Because I know people that went into freelance, and then they only wanted to sign contracts with companies that could have them for 1 or 2 years at the minimum. But then you're just freelancing for money, probably not really freelancing for really that flexibility.
Yeah, I really like that answer in that it is that double-edged sword, right? It can gain you a lot, and you have to give. It's probably going to be stressful along the way, but it's really dependent on the person that's doing it. And I think for some reason, because the job market is so tight, probably people are trying it out more and being like, well, I can probably earn more if I do this my own, rather than filtering through the company and me just getting a chunk of the cheese, basically.
Yeah, definitely. But if we would go look at the job market, I think freelancing is not really the answer. So for the Netherlands, I think we just need to change the mindset as well. To make sure there are more developers, there are more engineers, there are more people interested in technology. Because in the end, you see things are changing. A recent article from a big Dutch bank, they did a research about the financial industry. So there are 30,000 people working in the financial industry. And they will expect blockchain will eat most of their jobs.
Exactly.
So we have all those people that are now sort of good paid, sort of highly educated, and they need to find other jobs. So they, in the end, maybe need to start programming. They need to start either understand blockchain because maybe they have to use it in their job, or maybe even AI. Like other research also show like half of big companies in the Netherlands are already starting AI.
Is that what you mean then by kind of changing the mindset, in that you need to look around and see what's going to happen with your future career and maybe kind of shift?
Yeah, so if I would ask most of my friends, they will all say, I don't really know how computers work. But in the end, they're sitting behind a computer all day.
Absolutely.
And people are also afraid maybe robots will eat our jobs, or maybe algorithms will take away our jobs. And I think as long as we don't understand the algorithms, they probably will take our jobs, because if we don't know what algorithms are, if we don't know how they would work, but our companies are introducing algorithms, they are simplifying your job. They don't really know what those algorithms are doing, but they do take away maybe the harder part of your jobs. That is something to worry about.
I'm wondering in how far you need to understand what's going on, right? There can be some mundane things that you're doing, and those can be automated. Rather, they should be automated. But maybe what you're doing, if it's a real core thing that can't be done by an AI, how much do you need to understand about what's going on and the algorithms behind it, do you think?
Well, I think it differs. So if you go to lower school, you need to, you have algebra, calculus, you need to do everything by hand. So you need to divide things, you need to sum up values. And then if you go to high school, you probably get your calculator, and then it can do it for you. And then when you start working, you start using Excel in order to make all these things, because there is more and more data. But still, you know how to sum things up. At least I sometimes do it still by hand, just to make sure I know how things work. Later on, you have a device, but you still need to type in the actual values. And now you have a computer do it for you. I think the real scary part would be if you would add all these values or maybe a spreadsheet into a computer, and the computer will give you a result without you knowing how the result is calculated. I think if you're at that stage, then things are going wrong, and you should know more about what the machine is actually doing for you.
Man, I love that analogy, because it hits home so well. Coming from just elementary school and moving into high school, you're right. We did everything by hand. And now you're coming from a situation where you are doing everything by hand, and all of a sudden stuff get added behind the screen, and all of a sudden it's done automatically. And that magical part is weird if you see it for the first time. But when you actually understand what happens behind the screen, that's when you can actually make use of it more effectively.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it would also help us. I mean, at some point, if you look at the job market, if you look at all the companies that are active in the Netherlands, in different countries, at some point, I think we need to say, like, this is what a machine can do. And here it kind of stops. If you look at also some issues we had in the Netherlands with tax payments or money people would get if they had a low income. If the machines would do all this work for us, then there would be no human factor in it. I mean, a machine could say, you don't get this amount of money because your income was higher 1 year. Well, maybe a person that looked through the files could have say, okay, there's like a real true issue why this person had a higher income this year, so he or she should still get the money.
Yeah, exactly. It's that human factor and that just human judgment, basically, that factors in then. That's really
and I think we can have machines that do a lot of our work for us, make it easier, but still we need to understand how they work.
Yeah, for sure. Man, that's hard, I think. Moving back to kind of self-taught engineering, When I started out, there was a lot of kind of incubator programs in where you do kind of a boot camp and then you get placed by a company, but it was always a duration and kind of a 1 or 2 year contract. So rather than doing that, I choose to go broad. I moved into operations, and eventually I got a bit, what's a good word for this? I got a bit frustrated in that I knew what I needed to change, but I needed to go to a developer to change it. So then I pursued a career in software development, basically.
Yeah.
But those incubator programs, I think they are actually doing quite well in that they pick up people that either want to shift career or that are fresh out of college and just give them the practical experience rather than having them either teach themselves or go on the career themselves and kind of laying the tracks for them already to be a data scientist or an actual engineer there.
Yeah.
What's your take on that? Do you think it's an effective way of doing it? Because it's kind of a boot camp and then you get placed at a company.
Yeah, I think it's a really good way because you know you will get a job in the end. And you know the company is also open to hire junior developers. Sometimes you see companies that are open to hire people that are self-taught.
Yeah.
They don't want to hire people that have been through a boot camp.
Yeah.
And I think companies that commit to the boot camp or the incubator or whatsoever, they will actually know that they will get a person that they need to really educate and also help, because that's also a problem. If you come from a boot camp and a company hires you and they will assume you can code, you can create websites or APIs for them.
Yeah.
I mean, they should also understand that you will still need guidance those first few years, and that you won't be as productive as someone that has 2 or 3 years work experience.
Exactly. They can't just let you swim and expect you to make it out. Some people are going to make it out, but some people need help along the way.
Yeah, definitely. But some frustration I do have with like all the boot camps, all the ways to educate yourself out there, is that there isn't really any guidance or some sort of quality assurance that you really know a boot camp is good. You really know certain courses are good. I mean, there are online reviews, there are reviews by companies, but you never really see how in the end people are really happy with that boot camp if they really learn things there, or if they really learned how to do things at the company.
Yeah, I mean, the boot camp is going to preach the boot camp, obviously, like this is the best thing. But there's so many out there, even if you're talking about online courses. I can Google a tech course or a React course, and there's hundreds probably that are going to teach me a specific thing. But then which one is going to be a good one for my career down the line? I think it's hard to choose.
Yeah, definitely. And of course, there are different flavors. So me, myself, I really like to learn by example.
Yeah.
Or maybe other people really like to deep dive into theory and then do an example later.
Yeah.
So it also depends on your mindset. But I think there should be a bit more curation. And there's so much advice out there. There's so much ways to do things out there.
Yeah.
If you go to Twitter, an example, and you ask for like a good programming course, you will find like thousands of them, and people start answering different questions. And I can understand if you're new to this, it's also really confusing because you don't really know what to look for.
Yeah.
What people to look for, what kind of courses, what technologies you would need. So I think we need some more of a guidance in the Netherlands and the rest of the world. Like, how do you know you can teach the program? What kind of courses do you need to follow? What kind of boot camps are good? What kind of companies really want to mentor junior developers in order to become successful? And because probably most companies will say they will help you in your first steps in your career. But in the end, they also need to make money. So they need to make sure that you're actually being productive from maybe day one, maybe not day zero.
Yeah.
It is something to consider.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think companies have a choice nowadays. They should pick up the young talent and make them basically flourish throughout their career a bit more, since it is a tight job market. I don't think.
Yeah, I think companies don't really have a choice, but I think bigger companies should make a choice for themselves that they invest in younger people. Yeah. Instead of trying to get all the more experienced engineers from startups or scale-ups that are probably shaped for a larger part by those engineers.
Yeah, exactly. And even the organizations that you mentioned that are not willing to hire self-taught engineers, I don't think that's necessarily a good thing. And I think that mindset should change, in that it doesn't matter if you're self-taught or not. You're still going to be continuously learning throughout your journey anyway, because technology is changing all the time. You need to pick up either a new framework or a new tool or a new SaaS product that everyone's using.
Yeah, definitely. And I think if you taught yourself how to program or follow the bootcamp, you're probably also way more flexible in this. So one of the issues is indeed sort of engineering is sort of a black box for a lot of business people. So they know they would need an engineer or developer to create their website, but they have no idea how to do it themselves. Yeah. So if I was in business and I have no prior development experience and I had to choose between one person with 4 years experience and one with 0, I would also probably go for the 4 years of experience, because to me, it's really a black box. I have no idea what they're doing.
Yeah.
So probably the person with 4 years experience really knows what they're doing. So that would be probably a better guess.
Yeah.
Well, maybe the person with 0 years experience can get your product done faster, because the person is not really thinking about architecture things, about how to structure things for the long run.
Yeah.
Maybe doesn't even write tests. So it really depends on what you're building, if you need like the more experienced person or the less experienced person.
Yeah.
But as long as the black box is there, it's really hard for business people also to make this decision.
Yeah. I mean, at some point, it's going to come down to trust as well. And it's really hard to gain that trust, I think, when you don't have your past experience in the 0 years of experience versus the 4 one. So then it's even harder to make a case for, well, you should hire me versus the other person, basically.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, I like what you say about going into operations. Like you knew how to develop a bit probably, and then you went into operations because you felt it was better for you, but then you went back to software development.
Yeah.
I can understand if you stayed in operations, then maybe you would have thought about this the same. Like, you know, some development, but not enough to actually make changes. So probably you would put your trust in the people with more experience.
Exactly. Yeah. And operations specifically is kind of a hard thing, because I think that part is getting phased out a bit more. It's moving towards the cloud more, and that the cloud is just doing a bunch of stuff that operations people used to do, basically. There's no longer a physical hardware or disk that's going to get full when you're running in the cloud, because that's just going to scale up automatically.
Yeah, definitely. But it would be interesting to see how we can reduce this black box. So if you look at current education in the Netherlands, I think we're really teaching people to be unemployed in the future, because there's all these jobs that won't be there anymore.
Yeah.
So I think we need to make a shift early on, maybe even in high school, maybe in lower school.
Yeah.
We really need to teach people, like, if you're doing these kinds of jobs, then maybe these jobs aren't there anymore in 10 or 20 or 30 years.
Yeah.
So people maybe need to learn how to program in lower school, maybe in high school.
Yeah.
If I go back to my high school, I think they tried to teach me how to program, but in the end, the informatics course was just using Paint.
Okay.
Or using Word.
Yeah.
Well, it could be quite easy to actually show me how to do certain stuff, maybe make a small website with HTML.
Yeah.
And then in the end, maybe I would have decided earlier on I wanted to be an engineer instead of going into business.
Yeah. I mean, I'm 2 years younger than you, and I think way back then, they didn't really know how to either teach or tackle specific informatics courses. I think nowadays it's a bit better. My brother's 18 now, so a bunch of years back, he did an informatics course. And there they taught him Python and PHP and a bunch of stuff. Yeah, so that.
Yeah, and it's also about the teachers, right? Like if you have a 50-someone person that doesn't know how to program, he or she also can't teach the children how to program.
Yeah, exactly. You need to first get your shit together before you can teach others.
Yeah, so that also go back to the stigma. Like if someone that uses a computer as a nerd, then children in high school see a computer teacher as a nerd, then probably they won't take the person really seriously.
Yeah. Man, that's hard.
I mean, if you look back at the courses you were best in high school, it probably were the courses with the best teachers or the most passionate ones.
Yeah, that's a good one. Especially the passionate ones, because that passion comes across to you, especially when you're young, at a young age. And it might even lead you to pursue a career somewhere adjacent to the courses that you like the most.
Yeah. For me, I was really good in history, but also I got teachers that were really passionate about history.
Absolutely.
And at some point, I got teachers that were also passionate on history. But they had different sort of methodology. They were mostly not really talking about the history, but mostly talking about putting the history in perspective, which I actually found less interesting.
Okay.
So it really depends on the teacher and how passionate they are about the course to really make it a success for you as well.
Yeah. It boils down to then communicating, right? And even as an engineer or a developer, at some point you're going to do a bunch of sales, right? Because you need to negotiate an option with your teammate. I have a certain specific point of view, you have a different one, and then we just basically need to negotiate our options. Or you have to do some marketing and go to your business people and say, well, we want to use this tool. It's going to cost us a bit, but it's better than building it ourselves for X, Y, and Z reasons. So there's always a bunch of different facets that nowadays you need to have in your toolbox besides the actual programming. And then it especially helps when you already have kind of a different career or a different journey than a bunch of other people, because that could synergize, right? I could do more of the communication. Yeah,
definitely. So I've in university for my thesis, I needed to use Stata, which is a data analysis program.
Yeah.
But in the end, I could have also done this with Python. With Stata, it's only being used by universities or are the same. Most universities use it. Well, if on the other hand, I should have used Python. It's the same learning curve, but it doesn't have a UI. So that's the only difference. But still, for Stata, you needed to write some code in order to make it work. If I would have used Python back then, or maybe all the other people use Python as well, then maybe companies they work for now are also using Python instead of software they would build on the market in order to do their analysis.
Yeah, or you could make that shift way more easily because you already have kind of a baseline in the tools that actual companies are using as well.
Yeah, also, and it's also mindset by people and like the overall communities. Because in the end, if I look at my university class, most of the people are consultants.
Yeah.
But in the end, when they went to high school, probably none of them wanted to be a consultant because what is a consultant even?
Yeah.
You can be a software consultant, you can be a business consultant.
Yeah.
There were tons of ways to be a consultant. So we need to find a way also as a society to make people interested in technology from like an early age on, because all the children are using phones, but probably none of them know how an app is actually made.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, you can probably teach that in kind of a gamified way pretty easily to a kid with just building blocks and, well, this is how you figure out how to do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, and I think there are a lot of methods and a lot of things out there.
Yeah.
But it is really missing the guidance. Like they're all either there for profit or not for profit.
Yeah.
And they're probably also not really run by engineers, but run by business people that want to make sure there are enough engineers in the future. So I think we need to find a way to really bring those things together, and also maybe even as society think of computer programmers as cool people because they build the apps you use all day instead of nerds that are locked behind a computer.
Yeah. I mean, software is everywhere. Yesterday, a buddy of mine told me he's going to the gym now again, and there's a big circle in the thing, and you need to do some gym exercises, basically. But that is completely gamified in that your rhythm needs to be aligned with something that's happening on the TV in kind of a gamified way. And at the end, you get a score. And obviously, you have a certain ranking, and you want to get a good score, and that also helps you get fit. But behind the scenes, that's all software that's doing it, or that's all psychology that helped you kind of figure out the gamified solution in that way. So it's kind of everywhere nowadays where you wouldn't even expect it.
Yeah, and maybe also like even broader, you have Silicon Valley like as a TV show, but besides this, there are no TV shows about programmers. Well, there are big TV shows about lawyers, about surgeons. I mean, there's like 20 or something sitcoms that play around in a hospital.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Man, but it's hard when you say kind of a society shift, right? Because it starts early on. And if already early on you think, well, programming is something that nerds do, how's that going to change then? Or where does it need to come from?
Yeah, that's really hard. So it needs to come from multiple things. So it's also parents understanding technology, understanding software.
Yeah.
So these things will evolve over time, but it's not really a fast evolvement.
Yeah. And there's no silver bullet. As you say, it's going to need time to basically evolve in such a way that people are just more open to technology.
Yeah, and then popular media should adopt it. I mean, Elon Musk is probably famous because he's an entrepreneur, but not so much because he's an engineer.
Yeah.
So somehow his business endeavors are more interesting for people than his actual engineering endeavors, while the products his companies makes are really cool and they're actually changing the world.
Yeah.
But somehow people more focus on the business side of that instead of the engineering part.
Yeah. I think more naturally it will shift because kids nowadays are going to be more technology native than us, for example, or even our parents or their parents way back when they didn't even have a smartphone growing up or a YouTube where they could learn
yes and no, I think,
want.
because children are using the technology, but if the technology keeps them dumb, then they won't understand how the technology works.
Yeah. Man, I'm trying to figure out, I'm very solution oriented, but this is a hard one to solve, basically.
Yeah, I think it really helps by, if you go to a party and try to understand what you're doing, then you could say, I'm a podcast host. Or you could also say, I'm making quality software for companies all over the world and apps, and then probably people zone out.
Yeah, which is a shame.
Yeah, which is a shame. But if you would be telling, I'm a podcast host, I interview people that are working all over the world and changing the world, then they're probably interested. But as soon as you put software in there, people sort of zone out and think, oh, boring.
Yeah, I think it depends on how you say that, because your most interesting thing could be the program you're writing or why you're doing it and what you're achieving with it. Right? It's still a tool and it's still a method to accomplish something. And it could be technological, but that shouldn't really matter in what you're doing or what you're accomplishing.
Yeah, that's true. But if you are a surgeon and you tell about your open heart surgeries, then people really want to know how it works.
Yeah, it depends, because then you could say, well, I use these tools or this kind of mindset and theory in doing it. But the thing you did was still saving a patient's life or doing the thing that is exciting. Basically.
Yeah, that's true. So maybe we just need better advocates.
Yeah.
Or maybe like a TV show developers really showing how it can change the world, how it impacts things. Because the TV shows that are there are also putting down software engineers as hackers or these kind of things. You have all these shitty TV shows with terminals being opened in which literally nothing happens. And then somehow they're, it makes it a bit hard for people to grasp, I think.
Yeah. I hope it'll change. I'm a positive person, basically.
Yeah, me as well. But I do think we need to also, as engineers or developers, make sure that there is this shift. Like, be proud about talking what you do to your friends, even if they don't understand, and actually try to make them understand. Because maybe a friend of yours that's now a lawyer, maybe his job will be gone in like 10 or 20 years. Yeah. And they actually need to start programming later on. So it would be nice if we could somehow already influence them now, so they'll know what to do with their job in like 10 or 20 years. Or maybe you can already start that programming course on the side. Yeah.
I think a lot of jobs already are doing that, as you mentioned. My buddy's a trading guy. He makes a lot of trades. I have no clue what he does on a day-to-day. Yeah. But I do know that he needs to do a bit of Python, and it's kind of stimulated from the organization that he's with, in still kind of broadening his skill set also more towards the technical side, which is pretty cool.
Because I can also imagine a trading company maybe would say, we need more advanced software. So we need to buy our software somewhere. And then in the end, it would make the trading agents dumb because the software is doing stuff for them.
No, they make
it's really nice that they do it this way.
Yeah, they make everything in-house. So that's their edge compared to the competition, basically. And they hire a lot of good developers, but they also teach the trading people to know the technical side, so they can align better.
That's cool. So the trading people still remain trading people instead of software becoming a trading person.
Exactly.
Or maybe even the software developer that built the trading software is more of a trading agent than the actual trading agent in the end.
Yeah, I think it's a balance, but definitely both sides know each other. The technical people are still the technical people, and the domain experts should remain the domain experts. Yeah. But technical people need to know the domain, and vice versa. I think domain experts need to know the technical side, so we can just synergize better and make a better product at the end.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah. On that note, let's round it off, man. I had a lot of fun.
Yes, thank you a lot. And well, I just hope if you have been listening and you are in business, then you will start the programming course sometime soon.
I think so. I think it's all about just being open to try out new things and seeing if it works for you, or just learning about kind of the unknown as well.
Yeah, maybe trying to evolve it in your job, because 5 years ago you needed to know Excel to find a job. So hopefully in 5 years' time, you maybe need some Python or some JavaScript experience to actually find that job.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes, man.
Yes, thank you.
Cool. Roy Derks, everyone.
Beyond Coding. From your sponsors, Zebia, creating digital leaders.